Good morning, everyone. This is Mark Cabrera. Welcoming you to our seminar today about the 4 pillars of success of a successful real estate business. So today we're going to be talking about the second thing that you have to look at is the second pillar. So the first pillar is define your success in those 4 areas. Now, definition of the success in those areas, by the way, you have to write it down. Why? Because what gets written gets done. Okay? As much as you have it in the back of your head is great, but our minds are very moody. And so in our bad moods, those things goes out the window. You know? Those days that you don't want to brush your teeth, if you're in a bad, if you're feeling really terrible, you skip it, right? I don't skip it. No matter how sick I am, I barely open my mouth because I had my nose surgery. I'm still brushing my teeth and and it was like so painful. But you know what? I do what I have to do because that's something I set myself to do. So having it in writing is the most important part of this process of defining your success, how you're going to be successful, because it reminds you, just like my mission statement in the bathroom, it reminds me, why am I getting up in the morning? So it can get me excited. So in a nutshell, my mission statement in life is one of those things that I want to be the best husband, the best father, and actually the best friend that I can be with the people I have around me. And I want to be able to help them as much as I can. And I want to actually be close to God. These are the things that I value very closely. And I put that in a mission statement. So on days that I'm actually practically cursing something out, when you're actually or so angry or like so upset or so sad or whatever it is, whatever mood that you're in, you're able to kind of overcome that because it reminds you, puts you back in a place where you wrote that and you say to yourself, you know what? I'm actually centered again. This is the purpose of a mission statement. As much as it sounds fluffy or kind of like, oh yeah, that's, I've had people tell me like, that's a bunch of BS kind of thing, right? And I'm like, well, you know what? If you don't apply it, if you don't read it, if you don't actually look at it on a daily basis, I have mine laminated so it doesn't even get wet. I mean, it doesn't even get dirty. And so just to make sure that, this is exactly what I want to do, because there's moments in life you don't feel like doing these things, right? And you got to remind yourself, because who else is going to remind you? Who else? Nobody's out there actually care more than yourself about yourself. So that's the reason why you got to do it this way. The implementing plans is something that successful people have as a common. Okay? The reason being is because plans are only plans and it never gets anywhere until you start implementing it. So the premise of having implementation of plans is the plans have to be, number one, realistic. So the question you have to ask yourself is, when you made that plan, is it realistic? And when I say realistic, it's based on your standards, not other people's standards. Because I hear people all the time, oh my gosh, Mark, you'll never make this is kind of interesting. When I was doing recruiting, my boss came up to me one day and said to me, Mark, if you want to continue real estate, I'm not going to allow you to, because I want you to focus on recruiting. And I said to him, well, will you pay me over $100,000 a year? Because that's my goal in my real estate, is to make over $100,000 a year. And he comes up to me and he's like, no, you're lucky if you even make $75,000. So when I left that boss, I quit, actually. He told me I'm fired, but I said I quit first before you fired me. So when I left that person, a year later came around and I was making $75,000 on my first year going full time. And I was so tempted to knock on the office and actually show him exactly what he was telling me. If I'm lucky, maybe I'm lucky. I'm making $75,000. But the following year, I made over $100,000 already, the second year, after I actually left my full-time job. Third year was like close to like 150. Fourth year was like 200. Fifth year was like 250. Gets interesting. On my 6th year, the person I was mentoring with cut me a check for $93,000. I still remember this, in 1 month. And slips it to me and says, somebody at 32 years old don't make this kind of money. And I looked at him, I was like, yeah, but this is only 50%. The other 50% went to you. I never seen anyone making $93,000 doing nothing. So I actually stayed around for another year and a half. The only thing I was asking him is to give me an assistant because I didn't have a life. I was working 60, 65 hours a week, no day off for a full month. I mean, every day, Sunday to Sunday, Sunday to Sunday, one full month, no day off, and I'm working like 12 to 15 hours every single day. So this is the lesson I had to learn about the other parts of success. It's not just the money, but it's also the time you have for your personal time and for your life. So that part was actually had to learn the balance. So my ex-wife at the time was so mad at me. When she went to visit her family in France, I get a call from the fraud department of the credit card company. It's like, hey, there's a $10,000 charge that was charged in your account in Paris in 3 hours. I'm like, $10,000? It's like, yeah, somebody's using your account. I mean, so I called my ex-wife. I was like, what's going on? Oh, I went shopping. I'm like, what? $10,000 in one day? And she's like, yeah, I hate you so much. I would spend every single dollar you ever make. I don't blame her, because the fact is, I didn't know. Nobody was showing me the other side of the success. The other side of the success is keeping your relationship intact, having personal time, having, a balance in your life, being able to spend time with your family or whoever you care about, because at the end of the day, we're not going to live forever. And these memories you cannot bring back. I cannot bring back my 3-year-old daughter, when she's already 24 years old or, at this point. I cannot bring back my 8-year-old daughter who said to me, Dad, I don't remember you spending that kind of time you did, when I was that little with my youngest son. Because at that point, I learned the lesson, so I was spending a lot of time with my youngest son. So I have a relationship with my youngest son, but not my 2 older kids. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is the importance of understanding. And I'm sharing this with you because it's very important for you to understand that the life that I had to learn, not only as a successful real estate agent, right, which I can teach you guys all day long, but it's also actually as a human being, understanding that there's relationships that you have to maintain. So this is, to me, is very important. So implementing your plans, number one, has to be realistic, right? And it has to be within a particular deadline. This is another thing that people miss. See, if you want to make $100,000, put a date when you're going to make that. So it actually becomes more realistic in terms of trying to push to get to those numbers, whatever number you're trying to push for, right? So having a deadline on everything that you do is very important, because when you put a deadline, the likelihood of that, and you take that deadline seriously, the likelihood of that implementation to happen is very high if you put a deadline. Why? Because that deadline allows you to actually focus on making sure everything else is in line. Do you have the resources to achieve whatever you're trying to achieve? I'm talking about resources of money and time. That's basically what we have to work with if you really think about it, right? How much time do we have and how much money do we need to actually be able to, to drive around nowadays? You fill up a tank, it's like $60 to $70 per tank, right? So the question is, can you sustain 3 to 6 months of being able to actually do the kind of work that you do without having the bills come up to you and put a lot of pressure on you? And I was speaking to somebody the other day, and she was telling me that she has a full-time job, but then if she quits her job and she goes full-time, that's what she was thinking of. She's so miserable with her work that she's going to do well in real estate. I said, well, you got to transition yourself. You cannot just jump in unless you have 6 months of savings. And the first question I ask her, do you have 6 months of savings that you won't be pressured to try to actually make transactions happen? And her response to me is no. So I said, keep your full-time job. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be putting dollar signs on people's forehead thinking how much you're going to make out of them each and every transaction, just because you have bills actually you're chasing right behind it, right? People can feel that. See, when people tell me like, oh, I'm, present myself this way and that way, everything that happens in your personal life, guess what? It does affect you in some ways in your business life. So, that's actually one of the Mahatma Gandhi's quote, actually. What you do in one aspect of your life is basically who you are in all aspects of life. It's because life is one indivisible sum. This is who we are, and the better person we become, the more attractive we become for others. People actually, like I have an investor who actually sat down with me the other day, and I was thinking, he knows a lot of agents. Why me? He's got a whole system set up of being able to get short sales, foreclosures, probates, that kind of stuff. But in certain cases, he needs an agent. And he sat down with me. He's like, Mark, can you be my agent for all these transactions that I'm pulling in? Because I need an agent to actually kind of represent me in some of these transactions, because there's certain rules that I might end up, ethical rules I might end up breaking because I'm not licensed. And also, I want someone to be there to make sure that it can be negotiated with being a third party, not me being in front of those people. Can you do that? So yeah, sure. Well, will it turn out business? Yeah, sure, no problem. But of course, one of the premise I mentioned to him, it's like, whatever you do, I will only do things that are ethical and legal, because sometimes people like to push the limits, and you have to understand, no single transaction for me is worth my license or my livelihood, because this livelihood is bringing in a ton of income for me, right? But more importantly, if I were to do something illegal, I wouldn't do it in real estate. I would be doing it in more sinister stuff that you can make millions of dollars, like one of Putin's people. Unfortunately, but the point I'm trying to make to you is, do things legally and you don't get in trouble. Do things ethically, it's much easier for your conscience. You might be able to get away. So as a matter of fact, I met this one guy, his name is Roger. I didn't even know, actually, on a vacation one day. And we were on a golf cart together going from one resort to the other. The resort is huge. And he was telling me, he's like, Mark, I just got out of jail. I just got out of jail 2 years ago. And my wife was like, oh my gosh, who is this person? So I was like, well, I said to him, like, so what did you do? How did you? So with me, I'm not judgmental. Shoot, you spent 32 years. And you got out of jail. You already served your time. And to me, I'm pretty sure you've learned a valuable lesson. 32 years is half my life, for crying out loud, or more than half my life. So I'm pretty sure you. So I asked him, what did you do? I was like, yeah, well, I was part of this thing from Colombia. The drug, the big Colombian drug cartel person, right? And I was like, oh my God. And he's a very famous guy. Actually, he died in 1992. The drug dealer. He's like the biggest drug cartel in Colombia. So this guy was like apparently flying all the planes for him. I was like, oh my gosh, so you're the guy, huh? And so I was like, I got to talk to him, for a while. He was running a business that he told me, he's like, Mark, if I had to do it again, I probably would. Because who would turn down $1 million a day of income? A day. It's like, to me, I thought I was just running red lights. I wasn't doing any of the thing. I'm just transporting. I'm doing the logistics. If it wasn't me, somebody else would be doing it, right? I'm like, like, yeah, but that's a poor choice. But at the same time, he paid the price, right? But it's like running the red light. He was running all the red lights, and that's exactly what he compared it to. It's like, Mark, I kept running the red lights, and I thought I was going to get away with it. But then I had to pay the price at some point. So this is what I've learned from that person, right? I learned that no matter what you do out there, just do it right. So then you always have your freedom, and you always have a path that you can take the right way. Because when I was talking to that investor the other day that was asking me to become an agent, one of the things he was telling me is like, Mark, I used to be part of Fannie Mae as an analyst, and I actually structured their fraud program to actually detect fraud. I was like, oh, good to know. So tell me what I need to know about fraud, with federal government insured loans. And he's like, Mark, I'll tell you what, on short sales, just don't resell that property if your intention is to actually resell it without putting improvement, because that's illegal. Most people don't know this, but this guy knew because he's the one who put together the program for Fannie Mae. So I was like, okay. So he was there for like, I think 14 or 15 years in Fannie Mae. So I'm always constantly trying to learn not to get in trouble, right? Because even as simple as that, and he's like, there's a place where you can actually find all the cases that people went to jail for in real estate. And as a matter of fact, there's one here in Kensington, one of the agents in Kensington that went to jail for this stuff, he bought a short sale, sold it the same day to a next person without fixing the property. So literally the bank took a loss and then he actually took a gain. So it's ethical, unethical, but also it's illegal. See, that's where the boundaries lie. And you got to be very careful when you're dealing with investors or clients you're working with, that you don't cross the line of illegality. So implementation of plans requires that not only your resource is there, but implementation of plans requires that you do things in a legal way, in an ethical way. That's one of the things that you always have to keep in mind when you're in the back end of your mind. Even if you know you can implement it, you can make thousands of dollars. Well, needless to say, this person that did this, sold up short sale in a day, ended up in jail for 3 years for making 15 grand. Now, is it worth it? Absolutely not. The point I'm trying to make to you is, our business makes a lot of income and we can make it legally and we can do it ethically, right? When you're implementing your plans, just make sure you stay on that ethical boundaries where you don't get yourself in trouble. So that's one thing I can tell you. Do you have the right people to execute the plan? So as much as you can get in trouble, like me, I was a broker. I always was careful with who I have around me, because the brokers get in trouble for the agent's behavior, because ultimately our license is actually hanging for other agents. And I've seen brokers lose their license over unethical, and they're aware of it and they let it go through. So that's one thing I can tell you. They're very, very careful in making sure that everything is done right. And that's what I kind of noticed. Even though the company's growing so fast, they have a structure that's set up that allows to make sure that every paperwork that's going in is actually being done correctly. And then I know this because even on a power of attorney scenario, when a property was being sold, one of the properties I was actually dealing with, we had to actually make sure that the power of attorney, whoever the POA, was actually the person that's the correct person that's supposed to be selling the house. Because the last thing you want is sell the house with a person that's not legally allowed to sell the house to begin with. Okay? So that's why, you have to rely on the system, but you need to understand that you need to actually keep educating yourself about the legalities, about the things in our business. But if it doesn't feel right, ask. That's the one thing I can tell you, because you would know if something doesn't feel right. So that's the implementation part. So again, to summarize the implementation part, it has to be realistic. You have to have a deadline. You have to have the resources. Okay? And do you have the right people? If you thin yourself so much, which I've seen some people actually doing so many transactions, they want to hog it and keep it all to themselves, right? Is great. But then you run out of time and then the quality goes down. So the rule that I have is, if you're doing your first 6 transactions closing in 1 month, you're already overloaded. If you're doing 3 and you're doing it consistently, you should get an assistant, because that assistant will grow you to 6. And then basically either a buyer's agent or another agent side by side with another agent will get you to 12 per month. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. I mean, that's where the serious money comes in, when you're actually making over 100 grand a month. It's beautiful, I'm telling you. Your whole life actually shifts, and you can literally retire in 3 years.